Hello, and welcome to TechWatch, the EdTech video news program produced by eSchool News. I'm Laura Devaney. At a major educational technology conference in late June, author James Surowiecki gave a keynote address in which he explained the phenomenon he calls the wisdom of crowds. Surowiecki's research has important implications for schools and other organizations. eSchool News managing editor Dennis Pierce has the story.
How can it be that the collective decision-making ability of a diverse group of people, including those that might not have any special knowledge or understanding of a topic, is consistently better than that of the smartest individuals in the group? At the 2008 National Educational Computing Conference in San Antonio, keynote speaker James Surowiecki, author of the best-selling book The Wisdom of Crowds, explained this phenomenon.
The idea of it is very simple. It's that under the right conditions, groups of people can be remarkably intelligent, and they can actually often be smarter than the smartest person in that group. And what this means is that if you can figure out ways to tap into the collective intelligence of your organization, your class, people outside the organization, you can dramatically improve your ability to solve problems, to make decisions, and even, in certain circumstances, to forecast the future. But I think the really important thing to take away from the talk, if I can be so presumptuous, is the idea that if you can really make a group work well together, and those groups can range from smaller groups to very large ones, the range of possibilities that open up for you are tremendous.
To illustrate this concept, Surowiecki told the remarkable story of the Navy's search for a missing submarine. After weeks of fruitlessly searching a 20-mile-wide patch of ocean thousands of feet deep, one enterprising officer had an idea.
A Navy man named John Craven came forward, and he said, "I think I have an idea for how to find the submarine." It was sort of an eccentric idea, but they didn't really have any other options. So they said, all right, go ahead and give it a go. So what Craven did was he assembled a diverse team. It included submariners, but it also included other Navy men, it included salvage men, and it included mathematicians. With their help, he came up with a series of scenarios. So they collectively came up with a series of things that might have happened to the Scorpion. A Russian submarine had hit it, a torpedo had gone off in the tube, and so on. And then Craven said, now I want each of you individually to bet on how likely you think each of these scenarios are. Then he asked them to bet on things like how fast you think the submarine was traveling, what direction was it going in, what was the angle of its descent, and so on. And when he was finished with that process, what Craven had was actually a map of the ocean floor. And on that map, there was one spot where Craven's team said, this is where we think the submarine is most likely to be. Now, there are two things to remember about this spot. The first is that no one member of the team had come up with it. So it wasn't that they were piggybacking on the knowledge of their best member. The team had actually come up with a genuinely collective guess. The second thing is it was nowhere near where the Navy had been looking. So all the traditional search tools had come up empty. But Craven's team had not come up empty, because a few months after the Scorpion disappeared, a Navy ship found it. And it was 220 yards from where Craven's men had said it would be.
But for this phenomenon to work, he said, certain conditions have to be met.
The first thing you need is you need some way to kind of aggregate lots of individual judgments to form a group judgment. So you need some method of aggregation.
You also need a diverse group of people, he said, people with very different ways of thinking and approaching a problem. They don't even all have to be experts on the subject at hand.
Now, the point of this is not that when you go out to, say, build a team or think about what kind of group you want to assemble, you want to go out and recruit for stupidity. Okay? That's not the concept. But it does mean that you should think hard about diversity in many different senses. So diversity of age can often help, diversity of experience. You know, inexperienced people are not as smart in a strict sense. They have less experience with the problem, takes longer to get them up to speed, and so on. But inexperienced people obviously have the virtue of not being as familiar with all the obvious solutions. They are more likely to give you ideas that no one else has previously raised. And they're also probably more likely to ask the question that may seem obvious, but is so obvious that no one who knows asked the question to begin with.
Homogeneous groups tend to succumb to groupthink, he said, and they also are more likely to make the same mistakes in their thinking.
People are going to make mistakes. They're going to err on the high side or the low side. But the interesting thing is that that is perfectly okay as long as the group is diverse. Because if the group is diverse, what happens is that the errors people make essentially cancel themselves out.
Finally, you need independent thinking for the wisdom of crowds to take effect.
You want people to rely on their own information, their own intuition, their own knowledge. You want people to actually bring something to the table other than what everybody else around them is bringing to the table.
So where does technology fit into all of this? For one thing, he said, it allows us to aggregate the collective judgments of a broad group of people very quickly and across a wider spectrum than ever before.
And I think that technology, particularly in the last decade or so, has really enabled us to do this on a much bigger scale and enabled us to do it in a much more efficient and dramatic way than it's ever before been possible. And so I think the fusion of the wisdom of crowds and the new kind of tools that have emerged over, say, the last 10 or 15 years represents in some ways a really radical, transformative moment that I think gives us power that really never before existed.
As problem-solving and decision-making skills become increasingly coveted by today's employers, Surowiecki's advice strikes a particular chord among educators. For eSchool News, I'm Dennis Pierce.
eSN TV, your #1 source for video news and information from North America's leading EdTech publications, from the world's foremost EdTech website, the eSchool News Network, America's EdTech authority. Watch eSN TV. Encounter the field's most fascinating personalities, the innovators who are turning the old school into the e-school. Watch eSN TV. Meet notable educators, advocates, and leaders. Watch eSN TV. Get real-time coverage of EdTech's most important gatherings. Stay up to the minute. Get the EdTech news and information you need to succeed. Watch eSchool News TV.